been some time since we discussed football, and specifically, we'll be talking about Indian football, the highs and lows of Indian football, how Indian football has turned out over the years, where it currently stands, uh, what are our thoughts on it.
Pick one and stick with it. Like, which one is going to be the number one league of your country?
Maybe if they would have to go into, let's say, the English league, maybe they can play at uh, League Two, at the League Two level, maybe.
Other than Calcutta, places like Goa, Northeast India aren't really where the lucrative money comes from in sports. And that's really where there's the reason why there's a dearth of support for Indian football financially.
I just think now every time I start, it's going to be a blooper.
We know that this is all performance enhanced. It would take away the charm.
1 in 30% of the tests that are done are actually caught doping.
Erythropoietin. Sorry for the pronunciation.
Also, I don't want to say anything, but Russia.
I love the fact that you're straight getting into it with this
Yeah,
question.
Yeah.
no.
They made doping criminal altogether.
Hey guys, welcome back to All About Sports, the podcast. You guys are joined by our regular hosts, Aniket, Mazhar, and myself, Shubham. Before we jump into today's episode, for all football fans, last week we had spoken about Indian football, how football is progressing in India. Is it really progressing in India? What is the current status and what the future looks like? So the link will be in the description. You guys can watch that video. But today's video is all about doping. It is all about how doping has evolved in sports. Probably doping has been there since the time sports started. Athletes are always trying to outperform their competition, and sometimes they try to use performance enhancing drugs. So we'll be discussing that. Some interesting facts about doping which I'd like to highlight is there's this notion that goes around saying if everyone is doping, taking performance enhancing drugs, so is it really cheating? Or is it just about leveling the playing field? So that was an interesting quote that I came across, and I thought I will open this discussion with that. So, what do you guys think about doping? And if a lot of people are doping, should everyone dope? Is there a moral, ethical ground to it, or does it just become a level playing field? Yeah. So, what do you guys have to say about doping?
I think there are a few sports where most top athletes have come out and said that this is the norm, right? Cycling, fighting, a lot of combat sports. Until USADA walked into UFC and kind of threw a wide net around that. But again, should it be accepted? Maybe we'll find out through this point. But my idea of sports is test natural skill limit. How good can someone really be based on how much they've trained? Now, an interesting take on the whole doping thing is, since you are training to push yourself to exceed your limit, why don't you do something else as well, right? I don't know what you guys think about that, but to me, it would kind of okay, not ruin. Ruin is a bit too far. But if we know that this is all performance enhanced, it would take away the charm. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Just a few stats I'd like for our viewers to get a understanding of what doping is like. Between 1 and 2% of all the samples that are tested are found positive, and a survey found out that between 20% and 40% of athletes will confess to doping if it's done anonymously. And also, if only 1% of all samples are actually found positive, and doping is generally happening around, like, say, 30% of athletes, it means 1 in 30 dopers, 1 in 30% of the tests that are done are actually caught doping. So doping does happen. It is prevalent. It's just about how much testing happens and how many people get caught. So these are just some numbers I wanted to put out there. And yeah, Mazhar, what are your thoughts?
Shubham, this is perfect because it's so true. Sports has become, or rather, I think in general, since 1998, when the WADA was founded, that's the World Anti-Doping Agency. Doping existed before that also. I'll get into that a bit later. But you're so right. now it's a game of who has the better doctors and who has the better scientific developments that can help them or enable them to manage to get away with doping, right? So the Olympics are such a big thing, and that's a major reason why doping started, to be the best in the world. And the thing is, the Olympics happen every 4 years, right? So when you win for 4 years, people will keep talking about you, and then they'll talk about you beyond that as well, because then they'll be like, oh, can he or she do a repeat and all of that. So basically, you win one gold medal and your life is made as an athlete or any sports person for at least most of the major sports. So I think it comes down to that now. uh, and I think cycling is the perfect example of that. So cycling had started, and this doping talk started way back in the 1900s till the 1940s, where they allowed doping, as in it was acceptable till a certain extent. Like they were all allowed to use certain enhancers that can get them through, because we all know how physically demanding it is and challenging it is, going uphill and all of that. We get tired in going uphill on one slope and we're panting. These guys do it for days together. So that's why I understand the acceptable part back then. Then slowly rules came in and laws came in for it to make it stricter. Eventually, 1950s, 1960s is when they actually put in those rules. Then in 1965, they made doping criminal altogether. So it was just a sudden leap where they are like, no, you know what, we were accepting it. Now no more of this. We want a fair game where it evens out the playing field. No one can use any sort of uh, enhancers or so-called things that can mutate your body to help you help elevate your game. Now, we all know about who all has doped, and obviously, when someone mentions doping, cycling is the first thing that comes to mind. Now, I have another point to basically back up what Gui said in terms of performance. Like, of course, it ruins the fun for viewers. If you know everyone's cheating and doping, then what's the fun, right? Because you can level a playing field by basically putting in certain things into your body to get you up to a certain skill level that can match the best as well. Um, and why I'm bringing that up is swimming, for example. Uh, they had different swimsuits, technologically advanced swimsuits, which improved the timings of every single swimmer during a particular phase. I don't remember the time period when they got these new suits in, but all world records were getting crushed at that point in time. And then, so that was, I think it started in 2009 when they brought in these new streamlined swimsuits. And then they went back because they realized that, there's no fun anymore. This was, I mean, so technology has advanced so much where swimsuits could help swimmers to such a level. So it's beyond me to even imagine that um, at least all the people who can afford it and the sporting organizations that can afford it are doing it. So it's no surprises that they are finding ways to cheat the system and not getting caught.
So that was my whole issue, right? So an enhanced suit is available for everyone.
Yeah, in a way, exactly.
It's available for everyone.
Um,
It's not
yeah.
doing much for anyone specifically, but when you're taking something to enhance what your body can do, it's kind of different,
See,
right?
there's a difference. There's a difference out there. See, like how Gui mentioned at the beginning, when you talk about talent, if all three of us are athletes, for hypothetically, and all of us are playing football, Mazhar, your talent will be of a certain level, Gui, yours will be a certain level, and I will, like, naturally, we have different levels of talent.
Correct,
Now,
correct.
the most entertaining aspect of sports, and that what leads to debates and who's the GOAT in this sport and that sport, is how much you can push your natural talent. So that is interesting and entertaining. Now, in that aspect, if you get enhanced suits or like shoes or whatever, but that is equal for every athlete. They are getting the same technology, but at the end of the day, it's about pushing your talent. But once you start taking performance enhancing drugs, those drugs biologically work in your body in different ways. So not necessarily all athletes will have the same benefit. Some athletes, their body can work on those drugs very well, while for some athletes, it can screw their health up. So again, that doesn't make it very equal for all athletes.
No, so Shubham, my point is not that. My point is, if you can come up with, that technology has progressed so much that if you can come up with suits that can crush world records in a swimming pool, just imagine how much they have already discovered ways to cheat the system and beat the drug testers and get away with it. That's my point. So I'm not saying that
Okay.
it basically, that I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm just saying that technology has advanced so much that there's, like, my mind goes bonkers when I think about it as to what levels they may be doping at, all these top athletes or any athlete for that matter. So that was my point about it.
And I think you're pretty right. So everyone knows that in certain sports, doping is rampant. There were attempts to try and control it. I think most people have found a way around it. Yes or no? Do you think like there should be a list of drugs which are not allowed, like there is currently, or do you think it should be like open to everyone? Like do what you feel like with your body, enhance it to whatever extent.
No.
Just a question. Just a question. Like before
Absolutely not.
I love the fact that you're straight getting into it with this
yeah,
question.
Yeah.
no,
I
because
think
No, sorry. So since it's UFC, Malu, I just wanted to add one thing. Before I share my opinion, because I quite clearly know Shubham has a strong opinion on this point, but I just put in another fact, a couple of facts actually. TJ Dillashaw. For people who don't know, TJ Dillashaw was a world champion in the UFC in his weight class. He was absolutely dominant. He's only 33 years old. He got banned by the US ADA for 2 years because he had EPO found in his system. Now, for all of those who don't know what EPO is, it is erythropoietin. Sorry for the pronunciation. But basically, what it does is it increases your red blood cells, which means that it gives you higher oxygen levels, gives you a more aerobic state, which means you can obviously have more stamina and just seriously enhances your um, performance. It's the same drug which is used by the cyclists, and it's the same one which most cyclists been
so EPO,
have been caught for. But what's hard about EPO is it's very hard to catch because it's red blood cells mutation, right? So it basically settles into your body. Anyway, and one more thing is Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar failed 2 drug tests with the UFC, or rather with the US ADA, but that was for steroids. So in terms of any drugs, so literally what types of steroids and all, we don't know. We just know it's clearly mentioned steroids. So I think UFC has already strict rules in place for what is allowed and what isn't. That's pretty much every sport, tennis as well. So yeah, sorry, Malu.
so. What I was saying is, like based on what Aniket asked, I think doping should not be allowed at all. No sort of drug should be allowed at all. There are a long list of drugs that are already mentioned by the WADA as to if you're tested positive on any of those drugs, then you're banned or whatever the consequences might be. And with technology advancing so much, obviously there can be a lot more R&D done so that athletes who find ways to cheat the system, that can also be blocked. But at the same time, see, this becomes very tricky. There are a lot of steroids that people take when they're sick because they need those steroids so that their body can recover. Like I think in the case of Maria Sharapova, I think when her doping incident came out, she was actually taking those drugs for some illness or sickness that she had, but that drug also had some substance in it that can also be taken as like a performance enhancer or whatever, and because of which she got banned. So stuff like this becomes very tricky. But if something like this has to happen, then the athlete should actually be able to provide evidence as to why they've been taking that drug. Have they actually been unwell and that's why they're taking the drug? So I think there are ways to work around it. But basically, my take on this is that no form of cheating or no form of external substance put into your body should be allowed in any.
Malu, it's only cheating because they said it's cheating, right? if you open it up, it's not cheating anymore. That was my intention behind asking the question. Like right now, it is cheating because it's illegal to do. It's so this is unlike an underhand serve. An underhand serve is legal, so okay, it's maybe not the best thing to do, but when you take a substance which you're
Yeah.
not allowed to, it's illegal because someone put it down in the rule book. So do we take that rule out or not? That was where I was heading to. But like some interesting things came up in your points, right? So I love the fact that Malu brought up meldonium, which is what Sharapova was taking, if I'm not wrong. Used to treat basically poor blood flow around, mostly around the heart. So like people with chronic heart issues and stuff like, and you'd be surprised. Okay,
Yeah,
she
diabetes,
said
man.
diabetes.
Diabetes,
So
influenza, basic stuff like that.
she said she's been on it since 2006. Um, the response was that we've been monitoring this for the last 1 year. Since 2015, we've been monitoring what meldonium can or cannot do in terms of enhancing a performance, and we put it out there that this is now added to the list, right? So again, her case is a little. Also, I don't want to say anything, but Russia. So a big one, a big one. They've had so many sanctions. They are currently facing a few. I've got to applaud even the efforts of USADA and UFC, because look at, there are some records which drastically changed right after USADA came in. So just for an example, I have some here. Johnny Hendricks went from a 12-3 record to a 1-5 record. If anyone has seen Vitor Belfort before and after USADA, they'd be shocked. 13-6 record goes to 2-3. Chris Weidman, who faced Anderson Silva twice, 9-0 record gone to 2-5. So you got to commit that sometimes these efforts do really work. As much as we like to say that it's prevalent, people don't get caught, it has an impact. So if you're not so, and this is the thing, like you have at least two sports where it is really prevalent. um, and what I'd like to say about this effort, like, or how people believe that everyone's doing it, it is the norm. I think top athletes have to be crazy to do it. Like, but that is generally the perception, right? Everyone who's in the average category is going to say that all the top athletes are doping. But can you imagine? Okay, every tennis player has an Instagram story, a Twitter post saying they got tested for doping yesterday, today, and in 3 days again. So, I mean, and I believe that kind of effort is justified because you are preserving the ethics. It's not about just health. It's not just about how much you push your body, right? In sports, it's a competition, and I think you need to compete on fair grounds. And that is my take on having a rule book in play or not around doping.
What's crazy is, I was just thinking about it. We've covered UFC, we've covered the combat sports, and GUI, you are absolutely right. It's mostly prevalent in that because I think
Yeah.
I mean, directly physical contact that you're exposing yourself to. And I think it's understandable that it's used the most in that. And another example of physicality being a case why doping is really prevalent is weightlifting. And we are infamous when it comes to weightlifting and doping. Our Indian athletes, somehow it's always our weightlifters who end up testing positive. And the saddest part is we barely win any medals. And when we do, it's a weightlifting medal. I already in my mind have discounted that medal, saying that no, this athlete is going to get tested, it's going to come back as a failed drug test, and we lose our medal. And it's happened so many times now. So I think the physical aspects and the physical demand brings it back to your point, people not being able to afford these fancy facilities and the state of the art facilities. So then out of desperation and the want to be successful, they take their chances. And well, if you're lucky enough and you get away, great for you. But if you don't, well, suffer the
One
consequences.
thing that you mentioned, Aniket, were about the records of athletes who were doping, and once they stopped doping, how their records drastically fell or whatever changed.
Yeah.
Now, this is just something I'm thinking off the top of my head. Like sometimes I also feel it's a very psychological thing with athletes because they're taking a certain substance and they've had a fantastic track record, and then they stop taking that substance. Maybe it also becomes a psychological thing that, oh my God, I'm off it. And will I be able to fight the same way? Will I be able to perform
Right.
the same way? And then maybe they lose one game and they lose one match. And then after that, they're like, oh shit, it was the drug that was helping me. And that becomes a psychological thing. So
Yeah,
it's not necessarily like,
that's true to every possible addictive substance or something which you believe. I mean, but it could be what is it called? I'm so sorry.
Thinking of this, I remember I saw this one movie where a guy had erectile dysfunction. He goes to a doctor, and the doctor gives him some tablet. He goes home, takes the tablet, and then after he gets a proper erection and everything is fine. And then a few months down the line, the doctor tells him
It
there
is
was
a
nothing in the
placebo.
tablet. I was giving you a vitamin tablet, and it was helping. So it becomes a psychological thing, really.
That was the word I was going for, which I forgot. Placebo, right? So it does.
Placebo.
So and you can never discount how much of a mental game any sport is, right? Sports requires you to dial in your attention, your focus. Like, it's not just physicality. So yeah, I mean, Shubham has a stellar point in the sense that, so even if this person was on something which is currently legal or legalized, but at some point he believed that that is the you know uh, the reason why he was performing XYZ, or not being on it is why he lost a game. Sure, their records could be impacted, but if you look at some of these guys before and after USADA, I promise you, Shubham, you would be convinced they're on something. Like I will
Yeah.
send
I
those photos
definitely
across.
agree with Gui. I definitely agree with Gui because, and you'll just look at TJ Dillashaw as well. Guys, he was the most successful in that short period of time before he was tested positive. He was winning fights after fights, became champion, retained his belt, and all of that. And it was a sudden burst, like you see it happen. Of course, everyone hits their peak forms. They just find their mojo and things happen. But that sudden rapid rise, and then when you look back and then you find out, oh, damn, he tested positive, he's been banned for 2 years. It really gets you thinking that it had to be the drugs. It could have not been, obviously, it helped, but it's just now that he's always going to be remembered, and like everyone's going to associate him with that itself. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing I wanted to add is, guys, please explain to me cricket, yeah. Like Andre Russell. Why on earth would someone like Andre Russell need to use performance
I think
enhancing
even
drugs?
Shane won. I think even Shane won.
I mean, okay, fine, but Shane wants, I don't want to say anything, but in terms of fitness levels, we know the difference, vast difference between Andre Russell and Shane Warne. Prithvi Shaw, man, he just made the Indian team at the time.
No,
He
come on.
consumed some
Something,
drugs.
yes, something which we don't know about. Please, Mazhar, be honest. There's nothing has been written about it, okay? Which means he's clean. Sorry. Anyway, anyway.
No, but I'm just trying to like
True.
sometimes I just wonder, yeah. And Andre Russell, fine, Prithvi Shaw, fine, trying to probably cement his side in the Indian team, which he anyway had. So God knows why he would do that. Andre Russell is West Indies' best all-rounder, hands down. Secures a spot in the team, plays and makes money in the IPL and all these T20 leagues that he plays in. There's absolutely no need for someone like him to do. So sometimes it's just doesn't like some why I understand certain athletes who may be in dire need. Like I understand our weightlifters trying to do something to achieve something because they've spent their entire lives trying to become successful in that sport. They've reached a certain level. It matters, and at the end of the day, it's a money play for them, right? Money, which comes through
Legacy
popularity.
play. I think, yeah, legacy play more than
So
anything else.
exactly. So I understand that, but for Andre Russell, like
Like what you mentioned, Mazhar. One thing is which I came across in an article. Some of these athletes, they reach their peak or whatever, they make it really big in their respective sport, and maybe they do it by being completely clean. Okay, hypothetically. Then what happens once you reach that peak? There are $1 million endorsements, and you're the star, and you're making a lot of money. So sometimes what happens is athletes, they also start taking enhancing drugs so that they can sustain that peak longer, because like how you mentioned, it is a money game. When you're at that peak, the amount of multi-million-dollar endorsement deals that you get, it is because you're the star athlete, you're the best performer on the field. So that is also a reason as to why sometimes athletes, they tend to take these enhancing drugs so that they can sustain their peak longer, just because of the money.
Both of y'all brought up money, and now that I think of it, the the glory in case you win is so much bigger than the
It's massive.
it's so much bigger than the loss of reputation you face in case you're caught, right? So I think everyone just weighs their options, and they're like, oh, okay, Olympic. Oh, also think about it. How often do you see doping instances in a sport where most athletes are well paid? Cricket, football, but think about the Olympics. Olympic athletes are not really well paid, right? You spend so much time. You spend 4 years to train for an event, which technically pays you what? Nothing.
Nothing.
It's just
Nothing, right?
glory. It's just glory for them, right?
It's
Exactly.
pride.
So
It's national
it's
pride. It's just
exactly.
patriotism.
It's you becoming a hero. Period. So I think the stakes are slightly higher for them in terms of what happens in case you don't leave a mark in the sport, as opposed to footballers or cricketers who can play cricket till they're 35, play football till they're 35, 36, whatever age is except. Oh, 35 is just like, I think 35 was 10 years ago. Now you can play till 40. So both sports. There is a league somewhere for you. There is uh, a state competition. There is something or the other for you to. There are much more opportunities in certain sports. So I don't think doping is that prevalent in most of them, in those ones at least. And Olympic athletes much more prone in the sense that they are in that state where you are slightly more vulnerable to those temptations to do. Maybe I
See,
think that's
for me, what I think, like my biggest issue with doping comes down to, like, I think maybe two things. One is health. Now, when you talk about health, like for example, if doping was supposed to be legal and there would be no issue, you can go and do whatever drugs you want. Then when does an athlete know he has to stop? Like he can keep on injecting himself with so much substance, and that can like have a massive impact on you. Now, see, for example, bodybuilding. Now, it is not an Olympic sport, but there are so many deaths that happen in bodybuilding because athletes, they put God knows how much shit in their body. So how do you know where do you stop if there's like no legal framework in place? And my second issue, which I think is perhaps like a bigger issue, is the sort of impact it has on society. Because see, all these athletes that we're looking at are star athletes, and they have massive fan followings, and especially all these young kids look up to them. So if pro athletes are doping, amateur athletes would also probably be prone to doping because
Yeah.
they would imitate their idols. Now, see, these professional athletes, they have sports scientists and doctors who are probably monitoring them. So everything is in doses, but these amateur athletes don't have it. So again, that can have a massive health impact. So according to me, doping can have a large scale impact in society, given the fact that these athletes are role models and they have like millions of followers. So if they openly say, yeah, I'm doping and that's the reason I'm so successful, it will definitely influence the younger generation. That can be a big impact.
My question around that is, suppose you make this the norm, right? You make it the norm that you are allowed to take performance enhancing drugs. So automatically infrastructure comes up around it, saying that it's basically like say you need to develop a COVID vaccine. So everyone got into that effort of trying to develop a COVID vaccine. Now, if you suddenly say that over the next 5 years, we are working towards a program where we are trying to legalize performance enhancing drugs, so you will definitely have people, and because this is as lucrative as creating a vaccine, by the way. I'm sure, because if you tell big pharma companies that, you know, hey, we want you to make a few performance enhancing drugs which are safe, which we will allow you to test, which we want to roll for everyone across the board, go for it. I think a lot of people are going to jump in. So that's that point where we should stop kind of gets regulated automatically because the infrastructure comes up around it in case you say that it's okay to do. And the
But I don't really think it does, because like you said, a lot of pharma companies will jump in the scene and they'll be like, okay, let's mass scale and have a mass production
again,
about it.
Malu,
But
Malu,
then
100% what you're going to.
Russian Federation. Sorry, guys.
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say.
Two words.
There are anyway enough concerns about what big pharma does in general, right? And I know that because it's going to be a money game, things are going to get out of hand and the regulations going to get wonky because private companies things like that, which the regulation is going to go out of the window. So I was just posing a question because this is the easiest argument to make against what you said, that if there is infrastructure around it, if there
See,
is, because right now there
if
is already a body, right? There is already a body to regulate it, and everyone still makes the argument that it's rampant. So let it happen. Okay, we will regulate what is allowed, in the sense that a lot of things are allowed, but some things are dangerous for you. So we monitor your health as opposed to monitor what you're taking. So we monitor what happens to you.
But what happens to
if
those
you take-
athletes who do not have access to that infrastructure, but they
exactly,
still do because they get cheap drugs, they put it in the system, but they don't have access to that, and then what happens to them?
but I can still make that argument, right? That's happening right now. Don't you think? You don't think that's happening right now?
it is, but
But
that's not
see,
the
right
point,
now
right?
it's very hush
If
hush.
you
People are
legalize
scared.
it, yeah, and if you legalize it, or like accept, or like
A certain
morally
degree,
allow a certain degree, there all these other countries will never win another medal or win anything for that matter in global competition,
What I believe is
because
that,
countries
sorry.
are so highly advanced in terms of all of that, that it's either going to be deaths in the other countries who can't afford it,
Mhm.
like Malu said, or then it's just going to be that they don't have the money, so then they'll do something utterly ridiculous, something way beyond levels expected,
It
that it can
borderline. It is
hamper.
going to become
Yeah,
borderline
it's going to become like
experimentation.
a medical cold war, Gui.
It's going
It's
to
going to
become
become
See,
a
if I
it's
draw
going
medical
an
to become
cold war.
analogy,
experimentation. And my only issue is that every sport becomes like F1. So if you can do the R&D, okay, if you can set up the car well, you have a brilliant machine. But the difference is, it's going to be machine in F1, it's going to be humans in other sports. So that is
Yeah,
that is the one where I think, that is why I have to draw the line and saying that no, in to answer my question, whether if if we legalize it to a certain extent, or through like better monitoring and things like that, we accept the idea that taking some substances is fine. It'll never stop. There won't be enough regulation, and the risk in a sport like F1 is, you have a bad car because your R&D just went overboard, right? And you didn't do well enough. But if you don't do well enough in terms of testing a new performance enhancing drug, it could mean a life, and you can't put any value on any life. So
see, one
I
example I can think of is like how you mentioned, if it's legalized and if it's available to everyone, and how I was trying to explain that even if it's available to everyone, there are people who won't have the resources to get it,
so
or they might get cheaper versions of it. So, for example, today's sports science is advanced a lot. Having the best nutrition and diet is available to everyone, but still, it is far more available in Europe and the US as compared to take a country like India. Now, Indian athletes can also get the same amount of infrastructure that they're getting, but can we pay for it? Does our government provide it? Is there enough like private clinics, also private sports science clinics available? So
Mercedes
it
versus
depends
Haas.
about that.
Mercedes versus Haas. It's the same logic, right? Some countries just would be that far advanced that they do much better than the rest.
Mazhar, what do you think? Legalize, not legalize? What's your take on it?
no, definitely no. I've always been against it. I lost all my respect for Lance Armstrong. I've lost a lot of respect for pretty much any athlete that has been caught cheating. There are exceptions, and you can tell that from a personality of every athlete. Like, come on, you see their lives every day, and you know it. So, totally against it. No way I would approve of it. I want it to get out as soon as possible from the system.
Gui, quickly, one
No,
sentence, one
no,
word, yes or
one
no?
word. No, there's no doping. It's uncool. Doping
Okay.
is uncool.
Even I think doping should not exist in sports. To all our viewers, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, follow us on all our social media platforms, which will be linked below, and we'll see you guys next week.